Hello everyone, welcome back to my channel. Before starting the video, please subscribe and keep watching for more details videos. What Andrea Petkovic has already noticed about Coco Gauff's serve during her exhibition match against John McEnroe. Coco Gauff continued her preparations for the US Open by appearing at the Stars of the Open event during Fan Week. Gauff teamed up with Andrea Agassi in an exhibition meeting with John McEnroe and Venus Williams at Arthur Ashe, delighting many fans. But much of her focus before the US Open main draw gets underway has been on major background changes. Not only did Gauff split with Matt Daley just before the Grand Slam, but she has also brought in biomechanics expert Gavin McMillan. Gauff has been working on her serve with McMillan, who previously helped current WTA #1 Aryna Sabalenka in that same regard. What Andrea Petkovic has already noticed about Coco Gauff's serve, and former player Andrea Petkovic has now shared an early verdict on Gauff's serve, saying on the Rennie Stubbs Tennis Podcast, "I am not nervous at all. I called both her matches in Montreal where she served 24 double faults per match. That is 21% of serves she hit were double faults. 21% of points she lost were through double faults. Just let that sink in. How much worse can it get?" Read more. What a well-regarded tennis coach has told John Wortham about Coco Gauff hiring Gavin McMillan to help fix her serve. "I would have brought in 5 coaches and thought about my elbow 75 times. I am not nervous for her at all. The serve already looks much better. She made every single serve in that exhibition, and that is even harder in a way because you only have 10 points to make your serve. You can't find rhythm. You don't have time for that." Who does Coco Gauff play in the first round of the US Open? It has been an intriguing summer for the American, who won her second career Grand Slam singles title at the French Open. Shortly after, however, she lost in the first round of Wimbledon, while Gauff reached the quarterfinals of the Australian Open earlier this year. Her focus is now fully on the US Open, a tournament she won in 2023 for her maiden Grand Slam singles title. Just like in Paris this year, she defeated Sabalenka in the final, with a 2022 French Open final loss to Iga Swiatek on her CV. Faced up for the 21-year-old in round 1 of the US Open is Australian Ajla Tomljanovic, who is currently ranked 79th in the world. The 32-year-old once reached 32nd in the world rankings and is yet to win a title on the WTA Tour, while she lost her only previous match against Gauff. By the time the second ball rocketed off Coco Gauff's strings, Andrea Petkovic had already tilted her head. She was seated courtside, not in tennis gear, but in her Second Life uniform, dark jeans, a crisp linen blouse, and a notepad that was half poetry journal, half tactical breakdown. The exhibition match was meant to be light-hearted. Gauff versus McEnroe. Youth versus legend. Power versus panache. Everyone in the crowd expected trick shots, grins, and the occasional racket toss. But Andrea wasn't watching for theatrics. She was watching Coco's serve. And something was different. "Do you see it?" she muttered, leaning over to the event producer beside her, who responded with a non-committal shrug and went back to filming a behind-the-scenes clip for social media. But Andrea had seen it. She had felt it. The serve wasn't just fast, it was deceptively constructed. Gauff wasn't hitting harder, necessarily. She was hitting smarter. The rhythm, the shoulder rotation, the weight transfer. There was a new balance to it all. A kind of fluidity that wasn't there 6 months ago. And Petkovic knew why. She scribbled a note. She's anchoring with the back foot longer. Less pop, more placement, more disguise. This was the Coco Gauff who had once struggled with her first serve percentage in high-stakes matches. The same Gauff whose second serve had been the Achilles heel opponents waited for, salivated over. But now, this serve didn't look like a liability. It looked like a weapon, subtle, sharp, and increasingly unpredictable. McEnroe, to his credit, was still fast enough to return most of them. He even shouted out a few compliments mid-rally, that trademark New York sarcasm barely disguising genuine admiration. "Whoa, is that legal?" he barked after one down the T-bomb. Gauff laughed. "Wanna challenge it?" Andrea smiled to herself. She could see what the crowd couldn't. The disguise wasn't just in the speed or placement. It was in timing. Gauff had changed the tempo of her toss, slightly higher, with a quarter-second pause before contact. It looked innocuous. But for a returner, that meant everything. That fraction of hesitation, that breath of uncertainty. It turned retained games into riddles. Andrea wrote another note. Pause in the toss equals control the narrative. She's setting the table, not reacting to it. Back when she was still grinding it out on the tour, Andrea had always believed that the serve was about more than power. It was a language, a way of saying, I'm dictating this point. And now she saw that Gauff had finally learned to speak fluently in that tongue. She thought back to the early Coco, a teen phenom with a cannon of a forehand and wheels for days. But the serve had lagged behind, not in speed but in nuance. It was functional, yes, occasionally explosive, but inconsistent. The mechanics looked strained, rushed. The second serve especially lacked bite, often catching the tape or sitting up like a birthday balloon waiting to be popped. But now, as Petkovic watched Coco ease into her motion again, loose wrist, measured breath, a clean extension that uncoiled like poetry, she realized something else. She'd made peace with the serve. For many players, the serve is like a confession. It reveals everything. Your nerves, your ambition, your inner dialogue. You can't hide in a service motion. And for Gauff, who had always carried the weight of expectation like a rucksack full of dynasties, the serve had once looked like the only place she ever doubted herself. But this serve, this one was different. It had no trace of anxiety, no residue of overthinking. It had intention. McEnroe tried to lob her. She sprinted back, leapt, and hammered an overhead that whistled past his A. He held up his hands in surrender. Sheesh, Coco, he said. Are you sure this is just for fun? The crowd roared. Andrea tapped her pen against her chin. She knew this wasn't just for fun. Not really. Not for Coco. Players never really turn it off. Especially not the great ones. She could see the training behind the casual. The hours in the gym. The biomechanics workshops. The film sessions. She imagined Gauff standing in front of a slow-motion replay of her own serve, adjusting elbow height, recalibrating timing, probably arguing with her coach about fractional wrist angles. That's what it took. To evolve. To transform a weakness into something elegant, even artful. Andrea leaned back and watched Gauff bounce the ball again. Bounce. 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 Toss. Lift. Crack. This time the ball zipped wide, just kissing the line. An ace. McEnroe didn't even move. The crowd cheered again, but Andrea stayed quiet, transfixed. That serve had been slower than the last, but more precise. A controlled slide, executed with maturity beyond Gauff's 21 years. She added to her notes. She's not trying to prove anything anymore. Just being. That was the real breakthrough. Not the mechanics, not even the disguise. It was the ease. The confidence that didn't need to roar, only hum. You could see it in the little things. The way Gauff didn't look up to her box for approval. The way she didn't wince after a double fault. There had only been one. The way she walked back to the baseline like the court belonged to her. Because it did. The match was winding down now. McEnroe had cracked a few jokes about the speed limit on women's tennis serves, and Coco had offered a grin that said, "Try me." She closed out the exhibition with another ace, this time to the body. Tactical. Clever. Humbling. As they shook hands at the net, McEnroe leaned in and said something that made Coco laugh. Andrea would find out later what it was. Something about how he was going to start practicing again just in case she challenges him to a rematch. But Andrea had already stopped watching them. She was looking at the chalk mark on the service box where Gauff's last serve had landed. A quiet signature. A whisper instead of a shout. Later that night, as the crowd filed out and the lights dimmed over the court, Andrea sat with her notes. She wasn't planning on writing a feature. Not yet. Maybe she'd save this one for her newsletter, Racket Diaries, or maybe for one of her future essays, something less immediate, more reflective. But she did write one final line. She no longer fights her serve. She listens to it. And that, Andrea thought, might be the most dangerous thing of all. Because when a player like Coco Gauff stops wrestling with their own game and starts trusting it, really trusting it, that's when the real tennis begins. And it all starts with a serve.